From having worked in children's homes myself, there's parts of each side that are going to be hard or easy, and so Amy works on the operations side for Oblong Children's Home, and so she's got to raise all the support that they need and do a lot of the behind-the-scenes things that don't get all the glory in the children's homes, that sometimes everybody understands what it's like to work with kids, but we also have to have the funding and things there as well, and all the paperwork and all those things that need to go on behind the scenes. And so Amy takes care of a lot of that for Oblong, and she's been doing it for 9 years, so she's got a lot of experience, and she should have a lot to share with us this morning. So please help me as we welcome Amy Kemp this morning to share with us what's going on at Oblong.
Thank you very much for your warm welcome, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I was not initially scheduled to be here. Some of you may have been expecting Charlie Duke, and I'm not Charlie, but I'm happy to fill in on his behalf and to share the ministry, to share some stories with you. It's always a pleasure for me to go out and kind of put a face, make some comments, and hopefully tell stories that help you to understand our ministry better. If you don't have a heart for what we do, then the support that you give to us, which we highly value, feels much like writing a check to the electric company or to the water company, because that's just what a church does. They support missions. But I want to make that more real to you today. Before I get started in earnest, I'm going to do something that speakers, anyone that trains a speaker, a public speaker, would say this is the last thing that you want to do, and that's going to give you something to read or do while I talk, and that goes against the grain. However, if I don't circulate this clipboard right now, my fear is that I will forget and I'll miss the opportunity. We love to be able to communicate effectively with those who are friends of the ministry, and I know that this church is that very body of people that does that. I see newsletters and other things out on your bulletin board, and I'm thrilled at that. But if what I say today is something that you think, well, you know what, I'd rather have that firsthand. I'd like to have that in my own mailbox, whether that's email or postal mail. If that's something that appeals to you, I'm going to send around a clipboard so that you might be added to our mailing list in that way. And then on the back side of that clipboard, there's a little brochure that talks about maybe other ways you might want to be involved. Prayer partners, those that are Stand in the Gap warriors, there's descriptions of all of that. I'm going to send that around, and I'm going to count on the fact that when the clipboard is not in your lap, you'll be listening to me, all right? So let me get that started, and then I will talk more about the children's home and share with you a little bit. If you'll move to the first slide, I'll get started. I like to tell folks when I come to visit about our mission statement, and I've been working in nonprofit management for about 25 years now, so I've been on a lot of teams of people that have hammered out a mission statement for an organization. Now, if you've ever been in that kind of position before, then there may be some difficult images that come to mind, because what traditionally happens when you work very diligently on a mission statement is that a team of people work together, theoretically, to hammer out just the right words and phrases. And it may get contentious at times, because that's not what I thought we were about, and I thought we were about this instead. But nonetheless, you come together, you craft something that you're proud of. Maybe you get someone to burn it onto a piece of wood, crochet it into something, create some centerpiece that's then framed and hangs on a wall somewhere about the mission of our organization. But then, if you stick to that organization for very long at all, that frame starts to collect dust, and the people that put it together retire and move on, and then no one remembers why it was ever crafted or what it's really about. And so if those are the kinds of things that you're conjuring up in your mind, I'm going to ask you to forget most of that. Because when I say this is the mission of the Oblong Children's Christian Home, I want you to know that that's true for our house parents and our staff members on a daily basis. I want you to know that these words are inscribed in the homes, as a matter of fact, for every one of the children that we care for. I want you to know that our house parents could tell you these things off the cuff, because they believe in living just this way. And so I'm going to begin with the very first one that's up there, and we want to teach children about healthy relationships. When children come to live with us at the Oblong Children's Christian Home, they really have not been in a place to see what a healthy relationship looks like. Most of the time, I would say 99% of the time, they come from a broken home. And so they've seen divorce, and they've seen conflict. They've seen some physical abuse in some points of time. We have children that have been sexually abused, certainly emotionally abused. And so when that has been your background, how would you expect to experience or even describe what a healthy relationship looks like? It's very difficult. And because that's been your background, you're probably not in any kind of hurry to start a new relationship with another adult. Because frankly, you've probably been hurt mostly by adults. And so for that reason, I have a couple of pictures up there. Not only do we have house parents that serve in a very loving way to the children that we're caring for, but we also have several animals on our campus. And you'll see one of our girls up there, that's Anna with her horse, and I shouldn't say her horse, but it's probably the one that she gravitates mostly toward, and that horse's name is Tally. Anna just showed her horse last Saturday, as a matter of fact, at the county fair, and got a second place, as I recall, in at least one of the classes that she participated in. The reason that we use animals on the campus is that you can be assured, if you are a young person that wants to cathartically get rid of some of these memories and all of this baggage that you're carrying, if you were to whisper that into the ear of an animal, that animal's not going to run off and tell anyone else. Tally, if she could speak, would have plenty of stories to tell if that were the case. Tally herself was a rescue animal, and while I can't describe it in words, I happen to know that that horse has a very strong relationship with a lot of young people that have also been rescued from various situations. And so there's a connection point between a lot of animals on our campus and our kids that help them to understand healthy relationships. One of the examples that I often give relative to this is that Anna has a sister that lives with us too. Her name is Sabrina. And Sabrina, like Tally, had been abused in her past. And Sabrina will tell you that. She's come to a place now where she will give her testimony. She's a baptized believer, and she's come to appreciate that God is moving her through that into a new way of life. But she really has developed a close relationship with that very horse. When she first started working with that horse, there was something about Tally that she felt very close to, because Tally is very face shy. Until she gets to know a handler, she is absolutely not going to be timid in your presence. She's going to be very skittish. Well, Sabrina could relate to that because that's how she felt internally too. But in working with this animal, she saw herself in that particular animal. And so she had to work diligently and gingerly and carefully and tenderly with that animal until there was an amount of trust built up. And she stopped one day after she'd worked long and hard hours, work with this animal. She stopped one day and she looked at her counselor and she said, "Tally is learning to trust me." And she paused and she said, "Just like I'm learning to trust again too." Now, I don't know that that lesson could have been taught in any other way. I don't know that that relationship could have developed for her in any other way. It really points to the fact that God has given us lots of resources to deal with lots of trauma in the lives of these children. Horses are just one of those ways, and we have about 8 horses on our campus right now, and we had 5 girls that actually participated in the county fair just last week. The other thing that you'll see on that slide is that we believe in teaching God's truths, and one of the things that may make our program just slightly different from other children's homes programs is that we work not just with the children, but we work with their families as well. And so we invite the biological families or the adoptive families of the children that we're caring for onto our campus once a month. We call them family development weekends. And our house parents on our campus teach our children's families. And so, we talk to those moms and dads and say, with your child this week, this is something that we experienced. This is how we handled that. Here are the tools to use in your own home so that when that child returns to your home, you know how to act. You know how to be the authority in your home and not just codependent upon your teenage daughter or your teenage son. Patterns repeat themselves, and so many times we're working with parents to kind of unearth some of the things in their own childhood that they never healed from so that they can become a better parent to the children that they now have in their own home. And so once a month we do that, but we believe that all of that ought to be based in Scripture. And so the Bible is in fact our roadmap for how we teach children both on a day-to-day basis and how we teach their families on a monthly basis. If you'll move to the next slide, 2 more points that I always bring up when I talk about our mission. One is unconditional love. There's a picture up there of house parents playing a board game, and really that's just a trigger for me to talk about one of the girls that's playing that game up there. Her name is Haley. Haley was, a junior in high school, I believe, about 9 years ago when I came to work at the children's home. And Haley had really just almost finished the program by the time I got there. So she was only there maybe 2 or 3 months, and then she went back home, having finished everything, ready to return home. About 3 months into my tenure, I got a phone call from the church where Haley attended, and they asked if I would come and speak at their vacation Bible school, and I was happy to do so. The church was huge. There were 400 children alone at that vacation Bible school. And Haley, without missing a beat, stepped right up on that stage and told them about her time at the children's home and how she'd been blessed by that. She wasn't intimidated by the size. She wasn't intimidated by the fact that these were folks that she was going to go to church with on a daily or on a weekly basis. She was just brave. And I sat down with her after that event and I said, Haley, I have only gotten to know you for a couple of months and there's a lot to your story. So if you'll give me just a few minutes, I want to ask you some questions. And she allowed me to do that. The first question I had for her was, Haley, tell me what was different about the Oblong Children's Christian Home when you first came to live there versus when you were living at home with your parents. And it was almost like I had given her a script, knowing that I would be standing here before you today and I would be talking about unconditional love because she said to me, I think it must have been the unconditional love of my house parents, which was a terrific answer. But I wasn't quite sure that this 17, 18-year-old really understood that concept. And so I said to her, well, you're going to have to explain that to me a little more. And she said, well, it's like this. She said, when I lived at home and I made mistakes, she said, my parents would go to one end of the house and they would send me to my bedroom on the other end of the house. And I would hear them bickering and arguing about how I'd done something wrong again and what were they going to do. And they were blaming each other and they were blaming me. And she said this great divide existed between the two of us. She said, but when I went to the children's home, the very first time I made a mistake, she said, my house parents sat on the couch with me. And they said to me, if that same set of circumstances were to present themselves again, what would you do differently? How can we teach you? What can we do with you to help you overcome this? And she said, I recognized that I was never going to be outside of their love, that they were always going to be there, and they were going to work with me and not against me. And I thought, she gets it. That is the essence of unconditional love. I have another just very quick story about unconditional love that I got to experience firsthand this year. Again, it involved vacation Bible school, and I go out and do that a lot. And as Paul said, sometimes when you do the numbers work and the growth plans and the grant writing and the communication pieces, you lose track of actually being a teacher to people. And you actually lose track of being a mentor to the kids, because my work is not always one-on-one with them. Even though they come in my office and throw darts at my magnetic dartboard and we exchange conversation occasionally, I'm not in their lives as much as other child supervisors. But I got to teach this past summer, and I was excited to do so. I stepped up into a second grade vacation Bible school class, and I was actually talking about unconditional love. I'd gone to a craft store, and I bought some jewels, the kind that young girls would put over a jewelry box or glue to any number of pieces of wood or other things. They were just very simple. And I put 6 of them in a baggie. 3 of them I covered with mud, and 3 of them I left plain. And I asked the second grader in this classroom, a young girl in the back of the class, to come up and pick her very favorite one. And she looked at those 6 in my hand, and arbitrarily, I guess, she may have had some rules that governed this, but she picked, a bigger one. And she said, that's my favorite. I said, well, what about your second favorite? And she picked her favorite color. Okay, that's your second favorite. What's your third favorite? Well, there was only one left that wasn't covered in mud, and so she picked that as her third. I said, what about your fourth? And she looked at me and thought, why would I pick muddy things? She said, it doesn't matter, whichever one you want. I said, okay, I'll put 4, 5, and 6 in a row here. We'll look over these. And so one by one, I showed them all to the class, and I said, she picked this and this and this. And then I picked up that fourth one, and I put it in a bowl of water, and I washed off the mud, and I held it up. And I said, do you like that one? She says, oh, yeah, I like that one. I washed off the 5th one and the 6th one, and she could see that all the jewels were virtually the same, different colors, different sizes, but all beautiful. I said, would you have picked the same order if you could have seen through all that mud? And she said, no, I like this one the best. I said, at the Oblong Children's Christian Home, sometimes boys and girls walk in kind of covered in mud. I said, I remember one time we had a young man come, and there was no plumbing in his home, and so there were things that we take for granted that he just didn't have, like a shower and a way to brush his teeth. He didn't have any way to wash his clothes, and so he was dirty and smelly. And frankly, he lived in an environment where what came out of his mouth wasn't very pleasant either, and that he used words that we wouldn't like. I said, you know what, though? If Jesus were sitting behind the desk on that day that Caleb came, he would have been able to see through that. And he would have liked Caleb just as much as he liked you or I. In fact, he loved us the same way. I said, if Jesus were here, he'd pick all those jewels in the number one spot. He loves them all. He loves them all equally, unconditionally. And the same little girl raises her hand again, and she says, I get it. Those were her exact words. I get it. She said, true beauty lies within. I have a t-shirt that says that, she said. And I smiled and I thought, she does get it. So even when I go out to teach about what we believe and how we structure the home and the mission of what we do, I get to see little girls in second grade light up and get it. Because unconditional love says it doesn't matter what's on the outside. Jesus loves us the same on the inside. The last part of our mission statement is that we believe that every child has something unique and special about them. We often reference Psalm 139. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. Children who grow up in difficult home environments don't see that about themselves. They don't have a lot of self-worth. We get one of three answers when we ask, tell me what you're good at, because that's often a question we'll ask at a pre-placement meeting. What are you good at? I'm good at video games. Truthful, but not what we're looking for. I'm good at sports, which is also not what we're looking for necessarily, although a sports area is not a bad area to put your effort and your, let me put it this way. If you want to play basketball, you'll make good grades. So sometimes sports works in that it helps motivate you to get things done the right way. But in most cases, when we show up for basketball practice or track practice, we find that those children that said that they're good at sports really are not. And I blame us as a society, because what father wouldn't want his son to be the center of the basketball team? And what mom wouldn't want her daughter to be the head cheerleader? And so for those reasons, I think these kids come to us and they say the things that they think we want to hear, and so they say they're good at sports until we find out that they're not. The third thing that we hear is that I'm not good at anything. It's the saddest answer, because they really have no self-worth. And so we have to teach them that God did make them. He handcrafted them. His fingerprints were all over their skin as they came out of the birth canal into this world, because he fearfully and wonderfully made each of them. And so knowing that, we work with them to find out what's at the core of who they are. And how can we help them to develop that? Marissa is the one playing the guitar up there. She had 3 lessons in guitar in her home in California before she came to live with us in Illinois. And it just so happens that our teacher in New Life Academy, where she goes to high school on our campus, actually plays guitar. And every child in our campus, on our campus school, gets a guitar. And so now she plays at her church, because she knew that after 3 lessons, she had a little bit of talent. But as we built that capacity in her to know that, hey, I do this a little better than those that are around me. There's something special about me. I can do this well. And now she does. She does on Sundays. She does for others in her home who then sing alongside her in their church. And quite frankly, they're probably doing that this morning. And that's an exciting thing for us. If you move on to the next slide, after I talk about what we do, let me tell you where we do that work. Where is this work done? Well, we are in Oblong, Illinois, which really is not much of a community at all. 1,500, 1,600 people. It depends on which side of town you come into. We're the only ones that I know of that from one end of town to the other, we lost 100 people. I don't know what happened in the census the last time, but one says 1,500 and the other sign says 1,600. It doesn't really make a lot of difference. The biggest thing in Oblong is the Oblong Children's Christian Home, because we've been around for 50 years there. And you'll see some of our facilities and the things that you would find on our campus. There's a picture of our horses and some of the girls particularly working with those. We tend to find that girls have a heart for horses more so than boys. Not that boys don't work with them, but girls generally are the ones that migrate or gravitate toward that ministry. We have 2 boys' homes and 1 girls' home on our Oblong campus. We have a campus school building, as I mentioned, our high school, and one of the things that makes us unique is that, our teacher sits at the table and we have family-style meals occasionally there. You don't find that in a public high school. You don't find that we teach and test in Bible, and that's not found in a public high school as well. So we do things a little bit differently on the Children's Home campus. If you move to the next slide, this is an exciting part for me to talk about too. And that is just in 2018 and then beginning officially in 2019, we have expanded our campus. We knew that we were being stretched. We were getting phone calls from families that needed to place girls, but we only had 1 girls' home on our campus, and it was full, and it had been full for quite some time, and so we recognized this need to expand. And we had funds to do that, but then after you construct something, you have to worry about the house parents and the next 12-passenger van and all the electricity bills and the back-to-school clothes and everything that goes with 8 or 9 children in a home. So building it was only half the battle, because the rest of the outlook financially has to include all of the other expenses that follow. And so I'm here to tell you we were a little hesitant. Now, we have 60 acres of land in Oblong, and so the place to build physically was not an issue. However, we live in a pretty rural area, and so we have about a 200-mile radius where we do a pretty good job of finding churches that really want to get behind our mission and support us, but outside of that's a little bit rougher, and maybe we'd saturated everything that was relatively close. How could we expand and expect that God would, in fact, provide what we needed? We got a phone call. This is how he did it. We got a phone call in November of 2017. It was an individual in Fairfield, Illinois, which is a community about 70 miles south of us. And he said, I've been approached by a nonprofit organization, and they've asked me to call you. He said they own a home in Fairfield, Illinois, 5,800 square feet home. That's a big home, 5,800 square foot. That's almost too big for a single family. It has 8 bedrooms, 5 bathrooms. It sits on 7.5 acres of property. There is a beautiful fishing pond. They've built a pavilion back there. He said there's a maintenance shed, and here's the issue. It had been used for years as a group home for developmentally disabled adults, but the state of Illinois has come in and they've said, well, we really don't want these 16-bed facilities anymore, so we're going to move these individuals in the community to smaller homes. He said that was completed in February, and now this home just sits vacant. He said the nonprofit organization that owns it really has only 2 options. They can either sell the home and give all the proceeds to a charity, or they can give the home away. And they want to know, would you open a satellite facility in Fairfield, Illinois, if they gave you this home? Here we were trying to figure out how we're going to make this happen. And in a community 70 miles south of us, God had already made arrangements for it to happen. To the degree that the very day that we show up to see this home, we open the door to one of the bathrooms that they had built outside near the pavilion, and on the floor was a $1 bill. Now, if you know anything about real estate, you know that they have to put a purchase price on those contracts, and that purchase price was $1. God provided even the dollar on the first day that we saw the property. Amazing. If you'll go through the next slide, I want to just show you some of the renovation that we had to do to that home. We spent a lot of 2018, probably 9 months, using volunteer labor and making some changes to the home. We needed to make it kind of an open concept because there were so many divisions and really difficult to see across north to south, east to west, which you need in children's home ministry. We put in several bathrooms, and I know their eyes roll when I say it already had 5.5 bathrooms and we had to add more. But let me tell you why. See, I grew up in a farmhouse myself, and so we had 1 bathroom, and it was off the kitchen downstairs, and all the bedrooms were upstairs. And so if you grew up like that, you think, just like me, oh my goodness, why would you waste money putting in more bathrooms? But here's the thing. Because we're licensed by DCFS, the bedroom doors on each of the child bedrooms have to have an alarm. And when the seal is broken on that in the middle of the night, an alarm goes off in the house parent bedroom to say, you need to get up and check on this child. Now I want you to put yourself in the position of a house parent with that kind of restriction, restriction on your sleep. What if you had 8 girls in your home and each of them got up at least once in the middle of the night to go to the restroom and broke that seal on that door, requiring you to get up and make certain that everything was okay? If you never get a full night's sleep, then you will not stay in house parent ministry. I can promise. It's too taxing. You're never relieved. And so we made certain that every bedroom had an entryway to the existing bathroom, or we put in a half bath. And so that did take a little bit of time, and quite honestly, it took a little bit in funding to do that. But we've made such progress, and we've had so many people come alongside us. I don't want to belabor this, but I am going to tell you just one quick story. Had an individual call me from Villa Grove, Illinois. That's about 2 hours north of us, and they found out we were going to get this home. And she said, "What are you going to do about the furnishings in the bedroom?" I said, "I really don't know. I'm just planning on God to provide that." Because honestly, our budget only included, the renovation, not necessarily furnishing these rooms. She said, "Can I work on that for you?" I said, "I would love it if you worked on that." And so she, on her own accord, went to Slumberland Furniture in Champaign, Illinois, and told them about our ministry. And they asked for me to get in touch with them and send them more information about what we do. So I did, sent it up there. She calls me back and she says, "I went back into Slumberland, and they're just going to give you 8 mattresses, 8 box springs, and 8 bed frames for each of those bedrooms. Just give it to us." She said, and then I said, "But that didn't give us anything to do. We want to do something too." The whole reason she had approached them was because their church wanted to help. So they bought all the headboards and dressers to go in there. I found out about a ministry in Springfield, Illinois, that they built desks. And I thought, oh, good, we need a writing desk in each of these bedrooms. And so I contacted the executive director there, and I say, "Hey, I've learned that you," and what they did, they repurposed wooden bleachers because those have been outdated now, and you can't use those in gymnasiums. And so they repurposed all of those, planed all the wood down, and made desks. But when I talked with her, she said, "Well, these are desks that we send, kits that we send overseas. They're taller, they seat 4 kids." And then, okay, I'm thinking, I understand. That's really not what we're looking for here. And so I said, it's all right. I just appreciated knowing it, and best of, God's blessings upon you as you do that work. And she said, "No, wait. Let me see if we can find 8 desks." And I said, "Okay." And time went by. It got to be December. We were moving girls in January. I finally call her, and she says, "I tried and tried. I tried to look for 8 desks that we could use." She said, "I couldn't do it, but I made a promise to you." She said, "Here's a website. You go there and you pick out whichever one you want." She said, "I'll buy them, and I will have some guys up here drive them down to you and assemble all of them for you." Amazing, is it not? God provided in incredible ways. Stories that I could tell all afternoon. And we now have 4 girls in 7 short months. 4 girls that have come into that environment. We probably will have it filled with 8 by the time we get to the end of the year. If you move on to the next slide, what are we doing this year? That was an awfully exciting 2018. How do you top that? Well, I don't know that we top it, but we certainly continue to expand the ministry. This is a transitional living facility that we have currently. The construction of it is ongoing on our campus. The space where that apartment used to be space that we used for our office facility. In 2017, we built a wing onto our school building, keeping all of kind of the operational side of ministry on one side of our campus. So our school, our storeroom, our offices, our workroom, that was all on one side, all the homes being on the west side of the campus. And so we moved this part out, and we thought, what can we do? Well, here's the thing. I used to be able to go out and tell audiences of people that, when we step into this space where families are in trouble and they need restoring, about 2/3 of the time we're able to send a child back home. And we feel like we've helped to restore that family. But 1/3 of the time, we said we would generally be raising them into adulthood, 18, 19 years old, and then there wouldn't be a home. Honestly, even in the 9 years I've been at the children's home, that percentage has changed. It's about half and half. About 50% go back home. About 50% don't have that opportunity because there is no home left. So how do we help them to move into adulthood? I don't know about you, but at 18 years old, I wasn't really ready to live on my own. I still had the benefit of having mentors and parents around me, and we wanted to give these children that opportunity as well. So we're creating this space that we're calling transitional living. It will give children the opportunity to pay rent, to continue to live on our campus, to continue to be mentored by the house parents that they've had there on that campus during their childhood. But they can go to the local junior college, or they can get a job and kind of understand how to live by a budget And they'll be working for the children's home as well, because they're going to take care of their own yard and they're going to take care of their own property. And so it really is a lesson in growing into adulthood, and we're excited to see that happen in 2019. In fact, we have a senior this year who has already said, that's where I want to live as soon as I graduate in May. So we've got a timeline that we got to follow to get that apartment done. Move on to the next slide. I just want to, there's some success stories that I could be telling you, and I'm just going to tell you one because I know I'm running short on time and I don't want to keep you longer. There's multiple stories up there. Jess is the mother of Anna and Sabrina that I mentioned earlier, and our ministry to her has just been life-changing. Kimberly's on the horse. She had real trouble with aggression and anger, and that has all but disappeared thanks to the Lord and his work in her life. But the picture at the bottom is the one I want to talk about. Justin and the youth minister Caleb at his church are there in the baptism area. And Justin came to us, it was early last year. And I got to tell you, I was scared. There are very few times I've been scared at the children's home. But Justin came in shackles, and they had to unlock his hands and feet as he came into the children's home. And he came from Juvenile Detention Center. We work with families, as I mentioned, but his mom was not able to be there on the day that he was placed. She came a couple days later. And so I was afraid about how much interaction we would have with the family unit. If they were coming separately from the very beginning, how was this ever going to work? Justin had a history of theft, and the judge really gave him this opportunity. You can either go to juvenile detention and stay, or you can go to the children's home, and so he has been on probation with us. In April of this year, Justin and 3 other boys ran away from the children's home. Now, we've had runaways before. I know when I moved my family to campus, my girls asked me, are there going to be like iron bars or wire fences or something as we move in? And I said, no. We're not forcing these kids to stay. We believe that if you love them, they'll want to. But 4 boys decided that they would run away. Justin was among those. Justin, however, knew what consequences he would face if he didn't make good decisions. And so about halfway through the night, they were gone for about 24 hours. About halfway through the night, Justin makes his way to the local police department and turns himself in. And he said, I shouldn't have done it, and I need to go back to the children's home. And they brought him back about midnight. The judge took pity on him, had mercy, and said, that was your last strike. You go, anything else, Justin, and we're going to have to go back to court. That started for Justin a real change. Really did. And so he started being a lot more cooperative in his home. He started listening a lot more at church and in his youth group. And that picture was taken on Mother's Day of this year, where he was baptized with his mother in the audience, as a matter of fact, on that day. He had run away in April, and by May 13th, he thought enough about his relationship with the Lord to say, I got to make a change. Justin's one of the hardest workers we have on campus, and he really is. He had community service hours that we created for him and the other perpetrators, and they've been working on those, but Justin is far above hours earned than any other person because he knows he was given grace and mercy, and he knows where he ought to be going. Now, I can't promise you that 10 years from now we won't find Justin's mugshot online. I would love to tell you we live in a perfect world, and when you invest in these kids, everything turns out rosy. But it doesn't. It absolutely doesn't. It doesn't change the fact that you love unconditionally and that you teach God's truths and that you show them what a healthy relationship looks like, and you tell them that they are fearfully and wonderfully made and they have purpose. That's what we do at the Children's Home. If you move on to the last slide, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for being a part of this ministry with us. With your financial support, we are able to touch countless lives, not of just the children, but of their families. Know how many generations we will affect because we touched one life. And so thank you for helping us to do that. I put 2 images on this last slide before I sit down because the one thing I want to emphasize for you is that we are not an institution in any way, shape, or form. If someone calls and says, how many beds do you have? They already have the wrong idea about what is the Oblong Children's Christian Home. Because our home is a home. We have traditions like decorating Christmas cookies together. We take vacations together, like going to the St. Louis Zoo. We go to the county fair together. We do things together because we love one another. And I could have brought several kids with me today to tell you that that's true in their lives. They know it. They know they're loved. And they appreciate the opportunity to be a part of family because they don't have that in their own environments. Thank you for giving us the resources we need, for being prayer partners, to make certain that we help these kids along the path that they're on so that they end up living a life differently than maybe the generation before them. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.